Nice to have you with us. Welcome back to Early Kickoff. Look at that wonderful sight, the Amex just on the edge of Brighton. Today they welcome Tottenham here, and you can see a decent scrap from half 12, we're hoping, and a good fight as well from 1 o'clock in the morning here on BT Sport. Whittaker against Adesanya in the UFC. That should be a decent scrap. I'm pleased to say that Dan Ashworth, the Technical Director here at Brighton, joins us pitchside. We will chat in just a couple of moments, Dan, but first we want to hear from Graham Potter. We sat down with him this week for a bit of a chat about life here at Brighton.
Premier League footballer climbing the managerial ranks to manage in the Premier League isn't quite a news story anymore, but there's plenty that's unique about your path to management, isn't there?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't have classed myself as a Premier League footballer. That's for the first thing. I was there for a couple of games and had a year at Southampton, but I was fortunate to have a career, 13 years, and proud of that. It was something that I just stumbled across towards the back end of my career. I was doing a degree and I did a bit of a teaching qualification and just sort of, I don't know, organically grew to these opportunities.
A Masters in Leadership and Emotional Intelligence. What exactly is that?
The cohort that I was working with were surgeons and people from the military. So it was in terms of how they dealt with mistakes, how they dealt with high pressure situations. Both thought it was how you dealt with those situations, which was the defining sort of factor, I guess, in terms of success. And that was relative to me in terms of football as well. So it was just something it wasn't any grand master plan, it was just something I was interested in, and I thought, why not?
How did the job at Östersund actually come up?
It was a club up in the north of Sweden, 8 hours north of Stockholm. Wanted to do something different, wanted to think outside the box. I thought, well, I'm not going to get anything in England because of where I was at. It was a great experience, chance to experience life in a different place, different culture.
Different weather, very cold, I hear.
Yeah, first day, minus 25, having to cancel training because the footballs freeze.
Wow. You then moved over to Swansea. How big a step was that for you at the time?
I remember it was a huge step from a family perspective more than anything. We'd had 7.5 years in Sweden, very settled, family were really happy there. And I obviously got to the point because of the success in Sweden where I wasn't probably going to get sacked. And when you're a football manager, of course, you know that that's a possibility. So to move back into the UK was always going to be a bit of a risk.
Do you ever visualise you'd be managing in the Premier League?
No, I'm not that type of person, to be honest. I don't necessarily daydream. I just focus on the job. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very, very proud, privileged, fortunate. Yeah, I want to do my best and want to carry on improving.
And he has swapped the snow for the south coast, and we're now talking to a man who works alongside him every single day, Dan Ashworth, who's the Technical Director here at Brighton, having previously been with the FA, of course, and West Bromwich Albion, a former player at mighty Norwich City. Let's just talk about, first of all, the decision to go with Graham Potter. Did you see a man who coached and managed teams in a way that you wanted them to, or did you see a man that was able to adapt to how you wanted him to run a team here?
Yeah, difficult question. I think the chairman here at Brighton, Tony Bloom, has got a vision about how he wants to build the club, how he wants the club to play, how he wants to recruit players. And Graham was very high on the list of people that he felt would be able to sort of deliver that vision for him. So, he was one that we were really keen to talk to once we decided that a change was going to be made.
Okay, we've only got about 9 minutes, so we can't go on too long, but I would like to know, sort of shortened version, what is the vision for Brighton? One that obviously you and Graham share with Tony Bloom.
Yeah, so Tony invested in the club sort of 10, 12 years ago when they're in League One, and has built the club incredibly, and you can see the stadium and the training ground and everything that he's managed to achieve. The vision for Tony is to be a top 10 Premier League club. Now that's a difficult thing. There's a lot of other clubs that are either in those positions at the moment, or have got maybe more resources than us in order to build that. So it's about thinking a little bit differently, about producing young players, maybe recruiting a little bit differently, and making our resources stretch a little bit further to ultimately try and get the club into a situation where we can compete into the top 10. But obviously it's about staying in the Premier League first and foremost.
Yeah.
I think you've been here 6 months, Dan, obviously. Chris Hughton, I think in a lot of people's opinion, was a manager that essentially probably guaranteed to an extent Premier League survival for this football club. You know, others may argue it was going a different way. How difficult, I suppose, was your decision to actually go, you know what, thank you very much, Chris, you've done a fantastic job, but you don't quite suit our vision in the way that we want to play football moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, Chris is a top man and a great manager and a really good coach, and I wouldn't hear anything bad said about him. I'd hardly been here, a month or two really when it got towards the end of the season, so I sort of came in on the back end of it really, but it was a decision that the chairman and the board felt that they needed to make and maybe take the club in a slightly different direction, and it was felt that maybe a change was needed at the top in order to do that.
Go on, John.
No, I just think your job now is becoming increasingly important at clubs as the workload's coming on. Like, give us some sort of idea of your day-to-day things. What do you do week to week leading up to the games, and how much involvement do you have on match day with the gaffer and the players?
Yeah, so technical director's role is always best described as sort of looking after the interests of the club in a medium to long term. My job is not at 12:30 today, tactical systems or anything like that. That's Graham's job. He's the head coach in order to do that. So there's 6 things that come into me. So there's men's first team, women's first team, player recruitment, the academy, medical and sports science, and the player loan department. So all of those are sort of some medium to long term things such as medical, such as player loans, such as the academy, in order to try and make sure, of recruitment of course as well, in order to try and make sure that the club is sustainable. We spend our money wisely, we open up pathways for young players to come through the system, and that's one of the things that was really important to Brighton.
I'm interested to work out the sort of balance. Talking about the first team, all very important, but this is the most important part for you, making sure you get results on this pitch in the Premier League. So who's making the decision as to how your team play football? Is it you, with Graham stitching in the information that you want from the big picture, or are you saying to Graham, you manage as you see fit?
Yeah, no, Graham's the manager. His job every Saturday is to get the players that we have at our disposal. Is he also
deciding the philosophy of football here?
Well, I think what you do is you hire a coach that matches the philosophy that the club thinks that they want to go, the direction of travel they want to go. So, what Tony and the board wouldn't do is hire a coach that was totally against the philosophy and the direction of travel they see the club going. My job, as you say, is to stitch that together. So, Graham fits the principles and the philosophies that the club see as the way forward. It's then about making sure that the 23s, the 18s, the academy put the right plans around the young players. We get them out on loan in the right places to give them every chance of being able to play for Brighton and play for Graham.
And the benefit to that being, if at some point you decide Graham isn't the long-term answer for you, a new manager comes in, and again, you're looking for a manager that fits into the system that you've already got in place. This isn't you going to managers and going, how should we play football anymore, is it? This is different now.
Yeah, no, that's different, and that's something that was built at West Bromwich Albion, built at the FA as well. You have a longer term. If you keep changing, our view is that if you keep changing the head coach every sort of 14 months or so, which I think is about the average lifespan of a manager, unfortunately, nowadays, and then you go from one philosophy to the other, you've got no chance of joining up your loans, your academy, your development programme, and your player recruitment. You end up having to change 16, 17, 18 players in order to change the principles and philosophies. So it's about a long-term plan in order to get the best out of the resources we have at Brighton. And by the way, it could be that Graham decides that he's moving on because he moves on to bigger and better things. So
which is good for everyone, right?
Absolutely.
No,
we're in a situation with a club like ourselves. If Graham wins the next 10 games on the trot, then people who are going to be coming in and looking for him to move onwards and upwards as well. So I think you have to be realistic, and you have to make sure that you build that, I keep saying it, that medium to long-term plan for the football club.
I think on being realistic, there's a possibility he might not win the next 10 games on the trot. There's already probably talk of how long do you stick with the philosophy? Because I think around here, I think the fans are very happy with the type of football, the performances, but the one thing that is lacking is the results. So do you think there ever comes a time where you kind of go, hang on a minute, we need to survive in this league and we need to revert to a different form of style of play just to get results?
No, I don't think so. And ultimately, that's the decision for the chairman and the board. That's what they're there for, is to make that decision. But performances have been good. We've been a little bit unfortunate. I think probably a few points under where we probably deserve to be. And in the main, the performances have been pretty good. So we're pretty confident it will turn, and let's hope it turns today.
I think it's fantastic. I think we did Norwich, didn't we, a few weeks ago, and I think what's so important is, as football's growing and evolving, people like yourself with an actual playing background coming in, doing that link between the business side of it, the media side of it, and the playing side of it, it can stop clubs from falling into that trap of jumping from one style to the other completely there. So I think I think personally, I think you're right. You stick with what you've got. You've got a principle that seems to be working at Norwich. I think this club's a very well-run club, and if you stick with the philosophy of what's going on, I think Brighton. You're looking round, and it seems like an exciting club to be at, and one I'd certainly like to play for.
Yeah.
Look, I want you to take this question in the spirit it's intended, right? You were involved in England getting all the way to the semi-final of a major tournament.
Yeah.
And then you get a technical director job at Brighton. No disrespect to Brighton. Shouldn't we be in a position, though, where young English technical directors are walking into top 4 or top 6 clubs? Is there still a little bit of a ceiling there, a little bit like English managers?
Well, look, a job's got to be available at a top 6 club. They've got to have a technical director model, which not all of them do. And ultimately, I think I've always been of the view you want to go somewhere and enjoy your work and go and work for good people. And this project was fantastic for me because it was a proper technical director's job. You know, some are just head of recruitment, some are a little bit more on the operation and business side. This was all encompassing. It had the academy, it had the loans, it had the medical, heavily involved with the first team and player recruitment. So ultimately, that would be a more of a continental approach to the technical director, and to work in a great place, great facilities with great people. That was the reason I took the job.
Brilliant, really good answer. Listen, you know that I'm a Norwich fan. I love the way Norwich are doing it. I like the way you're doing it here as well. I think I'm different from you three because I'm not in the game like you are or you were. And as a football fan, to see your club with a long-term sustainable plan makes total sense. You know, I think we look at Manchester United now and think maybe a technical director is the one thing missing in that jigsaw. But listen, good luck today. We really hope that it works out for you because you're trying to do it the right way, bring through the youngsters, give some young English players a chance as well. So thank you for your time. Great, really appreciate it. Let me head up to the commentary box because Glenn is up there with Darren. I wonder how you sort of take to the technical director conversation, Glenn, your opinions of it.
Yeah, I think it's got to go hand in hand with the head coach. Brighton are looking to play a different way than they were last season. But it's the longer term scenario, if that's the case, as long as the coach gets the time. But what they're trying to do on the pitch, they're playing better football, but will they stay out playing better football? That's the key.